are talking House of the Dead. This is a 2003 video game adaptation by director Uwe Boll, of course, known for being one of the worst directors ever to grace the planet here. And this one was deemed one of his worst, but we'll talk about it in just a second. It's got a reasonable cast, however. We're talking Clint Howard, you've got early appearances from Michael Eklund, you've got Jürgen Prochnow, you've got Erica Durance, who you probably know from the Smallville and CW kind of shows. In fact, there are a few actors here that you'll see pop up in kind of the CW sort of superhero shows here and there. So House of the Dead, as I say, is based on a video game, which was one of these kind of like light gun video games, and is absolutely slated. You know, it is, people hate it, but I'm going to come to its defence to a point. It was actually followed up by a sequel as well, so we'll probably look at reviewing that at some point. So, House of Dead, the basic story is a group of young adults are wanting to go to this kind of sort of really kind of high-end rave, which is taking place on this sort of island, this kind of out-of-the-way island. Now, our group of protagonists actually have missed the boat, so they hire a kind of a fishing boat, which is captained by Jürgen Prochnow's character and Clint Howard as his kind of first mate. So they end up going a little later. When they get there, they find that the rave is deserted. There's just kind of like evidences of struggles and things. And they discover that this island actually has a dark past and is filled with zombies of different sorts. And they actually have some type of dark master as well. And there's such a surviving kind of partygoers, along with a couple of other characters, will kind of pop up to see if they can survive the horrors of House of the Dead. So, like I've said, I'm going to somewhat defend this movie because I don't think it is as bad as people say. And I just think people jump on this movie because it's the kind of the trendy thing to do, and Uwe Boll is like an easy target because it just churns out, to be fair, a lot of subpar stuff. Now, I am not saying that this movie is quote-unquote a good film. I just don't think it's the complete train wreck that people say it is. And there's a number of reasons why I say this. So let's talk about, first of all, what I think works. Now, when I review a film, I look at all kind of aspects for it when I'm kind of saying what I think works, giving you my ultimate score at the end of the day. And where, if you look at IMDb, you'll see lots of 1s out of 10 to this film. And to me, that is saying there is nothing good about this film whatsoever, no redeeming features, at all. And that simply isn't true, I don't think, because there are some things here that do work. Number one, I think the zombie makeup, for a start, is pretty good. We have a large number of zombies in different kind of stages of decomposition and stuff like that. Some of them are quite sort of skeletal, some of them are more fresh, but the makeup is quite good. And we do see some good exploding heads. We see what must be real life amputees kind of like running around on the floor as zombies with no legs and things like this. I think the set design it looks like a set, I will say that, but it looks suitably over the top and kind of like, very kind of like, game-like in regards to its horror aesthetics, spooky graveyard with kind of mist going around and old dilapidated houses like rivers with things boiling, but all of that. It's kind of over the top, but it's still quite a fun aesthetic, I have to say. The movie's also got a ton of action in it. Now, because the game here is actually based on... the movie's based on a game where it was essentially a shooting game. It's obviously more of an action game compared to like the Resident Evil sort of puzzle solving and stuff like that. So, of course, there is a lot of action in here. And it has a certain style on it. It maybe is clearly influenced by The Matrix, because there's lots of those sort of cameras where it's kind of like panning around people, very much like The Matrix. As I said, this came out in 2003, which is a few years after The Matrix, and that movie influenced everything, including this one. But nonetheless, I still think it's some quite fun and sort of you know, over stylized admittedly, but some sort of fun action sequences as well. As I say, I don't think the cast do a terrible job, if I'm completely honest. They seem to be a little bit over ADR'd at times, which I think maybe kind of people will kind of pick apart the performances because of that. But I didn't think the performances were, I mean, they're cheesy and they're, you know, it's a video game zombie movie that is not going to be taken seriously. But I think there are plenty of examples of movies that have far worse acting than this. And like I've said, you've got a good few recognisable cast members here that you know, never seem to get critiqued in other stuff that they do. And they do, let me just put it, they do an acceptable job. This movie's acting is acceptable for the kind of the style of movie that it's portraying. I have to say, I quite like their setup as well. The fact that, you know, these guys are going to a rave, they happen to be late, and, you know, they go there and they don't really know what's going on and things like that. And there are some likeable protagonists as well. And we actually get a reasonable amount of characters sort of introduced. And the majority of them are quite likeable, even though some of them are at odds at sort of certain times. So I quite like that. And, you know, man, I'm going to get crucified for saying this, but I actually kind of quite liked some of the directorial flourishes that we see. I mean, I'm not talking the whole film, but there are a few sequences here I thought, you know, Uwe Boll takes a chance and it has a somewhat of a bombastic style. And I think sometimes it does work on screen. I also quite like the kind of the music on this film as well. There you go, so some good stuff. Now, I am a realist. I appreciate this movie is no masterpiece, and there are obviously things here that don't work, so let's talk about them. Yeah, it's a silly film. The plot is silly and it is cheesy. That's the kind of the overreaching thing. But let's talk about some more specifics. I think the one thing that irks people the most with this movie is the director's insistence of putting flashes of game footage within the movie. I do agree. This was unnecessary, and I think it was more or less to pay homage to the game and just say, look, this is a video game adaptation. But it cheapens the film in a way, and kind of it kind of cuts up the action sequences to a point where it looks a little bit like you're watching a video game, you know, ironically. The action sequences themselves, like I've said, are a little over stylized. So you can't really take this as a serious kind of zombie film, because we got people sort of jumping ridiculously high, doing silly kicks. The zombies themselves seem to be superhuman in regards to some of their abilities and things like that. The weird thing is with this film, to a point, is that the movie starts off relatively straight and gets sillier as it kind of goes on. So the further you get in the plot, the more outlandish it becomes. So the tone does change through the movie and becomes a little more lampoonish as we kind of get towards like the third act, and obviously the final confrontation is very, very kind of silly. It's certainly very gratuitous in regards to nudity. That may not be a negative for some people. I'll just put it out there. What else can we say? Again, some of the things I like, maybe I'll understand people don't like. I think some of the music may be a little bit too much for some people. I actually quite liked it, to be honest, but I would understand music is a bit like comedy, really. Sometimes you like certain types, but you won't like others. I enjoyed some of the music here. Bear in mind, we are going to be in a rave movie, but some people might not like it as much. But I thought it kind of fit the more bombastic style of the quick-paced game, and Uwe Boll's kind of directing there. Like I've said, I mean, the sets aren't particularly realistic. They kind of look like a music video. In fact, this whole film has a kind of a music video feel to it. Almost like you've wandered on the set of kind of Thriller or something like that, and not an actual kind of horror film itself. And our characters are somewhat kind of paper thin. We don't really know much about them outside of some somewhat kind of cliche kind of characteristics. And yes, lots of things seem unexplained to you. If you're a zombie purist, you're going to be annoyed that some of the kind of the liberties that are taken with zombie lore, even though this movie actually directly references Romero, which is interesting. But things like the zombies they'll move the bodies out the way, which was kind of, again, it seems like an unnecessary thing to kind of have. and our main bad guy is severely kind of disappointing in regards to some of the kind of the visual sort of styling of him, and I actually think they could have done away with the kind of the bad guy, sort of the main bad guy. But it does admittedly give them the reasons why there are kind of zombies there and stuff like that. But again, you can't really apply logic to it, because like so many people would have gone missing that there would have been an investigation and stuff like that. So again, you can't kind of you can't kind of really say this is a particularly serious movie. And like I've said, there's plenty of like over-the-top action which seems very derivative of movies like The Matrix. So there are some stuff here that I feel other films have done and don't get critiqued quite as much as this film. Now, with all that sort of stuff being said, I think this movie is somewhat entertaining. Having done this channel for 8 years at this point, and having watched a hell of a lot of kind of low-budget zombie films, there are a significant amount of zombie films that are less entertaining than this one. So I've got to be honest with you. Despite I do think this movie is cheesy, and some of the aspects I can understand why they'd be divisive. I've got to say it's a non-stop action movie with good zombie makeup, and it has like fast-paced action sequences. It's never really creepy. They could have been a little bit more gore in it as such. We do see as exploding, but you never see too much in the way of kind of gore. But I was entertained, and that's kind of what I want from a zombie film, to be honest. I'm not looking for a real kind of deep and heavy movie and stuff like this. A video game adaptation about zombies should be entertaining, and I was entertained. And I give this a 5 out of 10, which is probably the highest score this movie's ever got. But there you go. So do you disagree with me? Are you one of the people that absolutely hate this movie? And do my points change your mind at all? If not, please let me know. Anyway, thanks for watching, and bye for now.